talk. She sees it in a 3D way where I never had it in my public school traditional math curriculum. So those were the two I worried about. And I thought, well, there's Zoe right now. Hey, Zoe.
I to my experience, we just had one, with like this transitioning, and I was talking to him about it, and I was struggling over what to talk about today, because overall I was thinking there wasn't a struggle, and I'm so excited when he's doing his first grade that I thought, okay, let me think about this. And all I came up with was last year, Blake is on the younger side. He's very verbal though. He loves math and he struggles with reading. So I thought, I hope he moves up with his friends because his reading is slow, and I just was a little concerned about that. I thought I was going, okay, the reading's going to come, it's going to come. And so all of a sudden, he comes into Steve's class, and now let me back up to the summer. I'm trying to work with him on reading, trying to get him to read to me. He doesn't want to, he's resistant, it's a big deal, he's struggling. I thought, how's this going to go? I kid you not, last night he's reading a paragraph from Harry Potter. He is excited. So the foundation that was built here just blossomed. And that goes for math too, because I asked him today, I said, what kind of math are you working on? Granted, he loves math, and it's addition, takeaway, or subtraction, and multiplication he's being exposed to, which is awesome. So there are absolutely, I thought, okay, any concerns I had, he was getting the foundation he needed to build those skills, and he's doing all the academic things that you would expect a child to do in first grade. So I can't say enough good things about the transition. My daughter, it was a different experience because she had the benefit of moving with her teacher from here to there. And academically, she wasn't struggling on either math or reading, so it was just an absolute easy transition.
And I would say, I asked Cooper last night, I said, what did you think about as you were thinking about moving from going to the middle school were you worried, or to the wood school, were you worried, or were you excited? And he said, oh, I'm so excited, because you were in the big kids school, the big kids part of the school, and there's this real wow, especially if you've been here and you've looked up that slight incline.
Yeah, the middle school, they already know the older kids.
They're just like, oh wow, now we're going to be them, we're going to be those guys. And I think that's, that from the kid's point of view, I think that's the thing that's sort of exciting about it. It's like the upper school. And from a parent's standpoint, the thing that I was impressed with kindergarten with Cooper was, I think, what you're all talking about, which is how individually Cooper was approached as a person who had strengths and was working on other stuff at a different speed and was developing lots of different ways at the same time. And I think what you find in the transition is that those teachers up there have exactly the same perspective on your kid as they did out here, which is that process of sort of uneven rates of growth among all these kids is going to continue for through fifth grade and beyond, really. They're always going to have different strengths, and they have this great luxury here of being able to approach them in that way and sort of give and work with them in those ways. So from an education standpoint, what I worried about is, is it too unstructured? Is it not like first grade and second grade and third grade? We're not going to have the clear milestones and markers. But it was to say, I believe that I see how my son is growing already through this individualized approach. I bet these more years will actually continue to strengthen that. And it's going to be a similar thing with reading, though, sadly, not till a little later, but for Cooper. But once it happens, now he can't pry the book out of his hand because he loves it so. Because he came to it in a way that was totally strength-driven and very natural, and that again, that blossomed in upper school.
Thank you. As I was listening to you, I was just thinking about all of your children. So there are 6 of them between the 4 of you here, and then 2 that I've met in various ways. And I was looking for, okay, what are the connecting points? How are they similar? And one of the ways that they are similar of all 8 of them is their comfort with adults. At least my observation is that each of them is quite facile with interactions with adults, whether they're classroom teacher or people visiting from the school or other adults. That's a cool thing. So
I think it comes from, they expect to be engaged with by adults. You know, they look at you because, and they say something to you because they're used to talking to adults and having them take them seriously and listen to their questions and try to answer them in a way that makes sense.
I have an introverted older child, and the smaller environment at this point in her life has been so awesome. And I was laughing at this little story, and maybe you didn't think it was great, but I did as a parent of her. She's been taking piano lessons, and last week we restarted a couple of weeks ago after taking a break over summer, etc. And last week she took her lesson, and she was kind of excited to play this piece that she'd been working on over the summer for the teacher. She played it, and the teacher gave her feedback. And at the end of the lesson, she goes, and it was a really positive thing, but it was huge for Molly. She goes, every time I play a song, you always find something wrong with it. And I think the teacher, and she was just so used to having that conversation. I thought, the little school. She could have never, her personality, the way she's naturally introverted, she would have never been able to question. And it was a sincere question. So he was, well, this is why. But she didn't do it in a sarcastic, disrespectful way. Anyway, that's been huge.
So I want to open it up to you folks. I want to also encourage you to go back to something Noel said, which was a reference to when Drew was switching from this building to the Woods building and conversations in the parking lot. And I think one of our hopes is for you to get some of those questions answered by some folks who've had different experiences and maybe farther along in the parenting and educational roads than what you hear. So, Melissa.
How have you experienced the gender balance in the Woods building? Because the rumor is that it becomes much more boy-oriented and that there are less girls and that.
When Drew and actually Cooper and Marianne were moving from one building to the next, it was actually girl dominated.
Oh, really?
So it just goes in waves.
Okay.
I mean, right now it is boy for Zoe in particular, for her class, which is third grade kind of. But it hasn't been much of a problem. Right now we're starting to talk about it because she's getting into kind of that phase. We've talked, Molly Ann had it too, where she wants to be around girls more. For Zoe, what we've done, and I know Heather did this for Molly Ann too, we just made sure she had all girls outside also. So Zoe is amazingly good with boys, and whether she's learned that here or if that's who she was before, I have no idea. But it doesn't affect her in class at all. It doesn't affect her outside. Right now, as her best friend here, girlfriend, went to India for a month, she's really missing her. So that's why I say it's even an issue, and it's the first time it's been an issue. And for Zoe, we've also just her extracurricular activities. She connects with other girls. So for Zoe, it's sports, and she has her little soccer team she's played with since she was 5 in the neighborhood. So anytime she's feeling on the weekends like she needs girl fix, we make sure she has that girl fix.
So does that mean your class is more boy?
Very boy-oriented, actually,
Okay.
right now. Zoe's one of 3 girls in her class.
Yeah.
Go with Gus. And actually, she's found Gus. She and Gus.
Yes.
Zoe
Yeah.
and Gus are bet like this now.
I
I hear about Gus more than any of the girls now.
Well, I don't know what the population of the Meadows building is right now, girl versus boy, but I do know that right now there are more boys up in the Woods building. And it does go in waves, but I would say look at the wave you're in. I mean, if that's a worry, then look at what the population is you're currently in, and it's probably going to be fairly similar moving up. I mean, we don't specifically recruit boys, so just sort of goes.
Molly Ann came into a very boy-heavy kindergarten.
Yeah.
Those are her best. I mean,
Yeah.
she just said yesterday she was listing off her best friends, and there are 3 boys. But there reaches a point where she's looking for a girl, and so to that point, I think right now Alice's class is kind of good level.
50-50.
Yeah, it's 50-50. My son's class is about
So I'm thinking very practically. I have twins I bring in, and they're not the easiest crew to kind of keep in. You may have seen me in the morning. So the idea of them going to the Woods building, I'm on the circle, and they just hop out of the car, absolutely freaks me out. Because I just know what's going to happen. Like, no. How does that generally go? Are most of the kids at that point? 6 months is a long time for
You
me.
just don't do it until they're in development.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
You
yeah.
just- so
I mean, plenty of parents still, at
I
fourth
think
grade
Lisa,
walk their
yeah,
kids in.
walks.
Yes, yeah.
okay.
My-
I watched Pollyanna.
You're fine today. You come with me.
And my kids, as soon as they could, they said, "Don't you dare park, Mom." And at first
Yeah.
I'd park and
Yeah.
just watch them, make sure they got there. But my kids were like, hands off.
I were park mom. I think Pollyanna still, beginning of this school year. Please park. Was it Steve in the beginning when it let us do he wanted us walking up for the first part? We have a younger first grade. Some of the kids are younger, some are older. And he had it until the kids were ready, that we would walk up and drop off the kids and pick them up instead of using
And the teachers will determine when it's okay to do the turnaround pickup too. So if the class starts, and isn't they feel developmentally capable of sitting at the turnaround nicely, waiting for you to pick them up at the end of the day, then they'll ask you to come up to the class for a few months
Good.
until the class is ready.
That helps. It gives you a certain amount of deniability. The teacher doesn't allow it.
Yeah.
But I'm not the bad guy. They respect the teacher. It's all good. It's like, what? I'm just working along here.
Yeah, and I can say with my two kids, like Jackson Steve's class now, and just in the last week, I've dropped them off at the turnaround coming to school. But I always ask them, do you want me to go out with you? And it's really been directed by him. And, it's kind of important to see that. Now my older one, who was here, he's not here anymore, he's young. But when he started in the Woods building, like the first day of school, he didn't even want me to come in with him. He's like, you just drop me off. Which was unbelievable, really, because when he was in Julie's class, for the first couple of weeks, he wouldn't get off my leg. He's sitting there in the class, and all the other kids are like, fine. So, it'll happen.
Yeah. I'm not worried about what they want.
That's well understood. I have a quick question about middle school transition. I mean, because they're coming from such a good sort of free, not a rigid road background in middle school. How was that transition for your kids in terms of being different or a little bit different approach to things? Background.
Okay, so they went to, both of my older kids went to University Prep, which is a fairly standard, structured academic school in Seattle. What's interesting is the skills they learned here that set them up really well for that environment were this idea of collaborative teaching or collaborative learning, that the teachers were there to help them succeed, right? Not just to tell them stuff. And I mean, the teachers all love my kids because they've come from this environment and they feel really comfortable with the teachers. Now, there are some things like my son always says, well, I didn't learn long division. And, he's a math, he doesn't have a problem with math, but that was a skill that he felt, was not addressed properly at the little school. And he lets me know that regularly. Has that hindered his success in middle school? No, not really. And he they both had to take the IC test to go there. And who was talking? You were talking about the test.
I don't know if I was, but we're also.
Okay. The interesting thing was that the test taking was beautiful. I mean, Grace, for Grace, I said, well, you're going to have to take this standardized test. And she said, oh, what do I have to do? And so she spent some time looking at the book, and she said, okay, this shouldn't be a problem. And there wasn't the kind of stress. It wasn't like everything depends on this test, right? It's like, well, this is another chance for me to show these people what I got, right? And that's a much different feeling that,
Yeah.
oh my God, I gotta get up 1,600 or
Right.
whatever.
Exactly.
So there was that aspect of it. But yeah, I think the thing that everybody's impressed with kids coming out of here, and it's not just my kids. I've heard it from a lot of different kids for different schools, is that idea that the teacher can always rely on that kid to do their best and to ask if they have if they have a problem, if they have a problem with the way they're being taught, right? They will ask, and that's something that as a teacher has got to be wonderful, right? You're teaching all these sort of people who come from the different background where it's like, okay, I'm going to focus and listen, and that teacher's always going to tell me the right thing, right? Versus, hey, it's almost more collegiate sort of way of interacting. So, and I think being set up for that early really helped them.
And I can say Drew is doing long division with decimal places right now. He's covered.
The curriculum is
No, wait a minute. I know Grant learned this stuff, but it's just that he wants to tell me that that's why he might not get an A in calculus this year, because I didn't learn long division.
We're doing the middle school search right now, and brought him to a lot of the different private schools. We're going to weasel our way in to get to take him on a tour of the public middle school, because they don't do that, so you have to kind of push a little bit.
Okay.
But we're going to look at the public, and then I've taken him on all these private, and he's picked college preparatory, kind of very traditional, Lakeside, University Prep, and Overlake. And I have to say, I'm not at all worried about it. Because I told him about the essay questions, and he was like, okay, I'm going to bring him to school. He is so excited to write those essays. He loves writing, and he is so excited about writing those essays. He has no stress. I forgot to even tell him that the school helped us put together an ICE prep course here on campus, and they're starting it today after school. I kind of forgot to even tell him, because he doesn't have any stress over it. It's not a big deal. So.
I would say as we look at the other schools, the middle schools as well, that what I'm impressed with is it's very easy to imagine Cooper succeeding in all of these schools regarding fit. It's not, and he had some question. One of the schools that he liked is a school that was, in many ways, very much like the little school of the Hillside community. So he loved it because it was the little school up on for older kids, and we live in Seattle, so we're like. We don't want to put limits on you, but not there.
Because getting there is like 10 times harder than
Way
getting there.
harder. But he had a bit of, he had, I think, some anxiety of like, I learned so well here. I mean, he loves it here. He loves the way he's been taught and all that stuff. He had some like, I hope it's just like the little school again. And as a parent, I don't want him to have the little school experience again. I think it's been an awesome, perfect experience for what it is, and now he's ready for the next way to learn how to learn. Because that's really what it's about. There are all these different modes of learning, and so this is a different kind of way of doing it.
So how does what your kids do on a day-to-day basis differ between Meadows and Woodson? How do they kind of feel about that?
What I would say that the biggest is that they play here. The play turns into more structured learning, where it developmentally, appropriately so. So by the oldest class, they get to play the math games and stuff, but they know they're learning math. You know what I mean? They do computer games, but it is very, that kind of thing. So the play and learning here, you see it as much more play and where's the learning, and it's hard to see, even though they're getting smarter, and they're each level as they get older, the play starts turning more, or maybe developmentally, I don't know, maybe they're more capable of seeing it as learning. You know what I mean? That they're actually, so I'm not sure if it's the kids change it, but it's, so they still get to have fun, where they get to do, Michael, you were just talking about it the other day, where there's this bird, they found a dead bird And in a Meadows class, if they did that, they'd probably go to the library and get the books on the birds and identify what bird it was, that kind of thing. Or if they find a spider and they go. In the woods, and in the oldest class, the oldest couple classes right now, they are doing a whole criminal investigation of what, and they're writing down their theories of what could have happened. Could they have run into the window, and then would it be that much, could he really get over there from, how fast would he have been, that kind of thing. Or would he fall out of the tree, and then why would he have fallen out of the tree, that kind of thing. And then they're taking it, so it's way beyond looking up birds. They froze it. And they were doing scientific experiments, and
Cooper has this drawing from last year of, the bird.
Yeah, they get to
laid
draw.
out in pieces, like eye, with talons, and they're all labeled. It's like it's an informational thing. It's very, I would say that the word, they become aware of the abstraction as well. Like here, it's very tactile. I'm learning things in ways that are, I'm playing with it, I'm stacking, I'm interacting with people in a very clear way. Up there, they're aware, you said they know they're doing math, they know they're doing history, they learn about fiction and, non-fiction. So the idea of, not that it becomes different subjects, because that's really not the way they approach stuff here. It's always this blending of things, but that they are aware of the different subjects that make these things up.
I think the level
is also homework.
Yeah. For me, I think it's the level of autonomy, right? You start here, and the class is very much a unit. You move out to the playground, and you move back in, and as you start moving up there, and your ability to leave the classroom sometimes by yourself and go to the library or explore something in the woods, or right, the older they get, the more they get that chance to follow their own, to go where they want, to leave that sort of classroom environment, and come down here and help, or go to Carmen's class and help, or go to the lot. They get that. They gradually get to explore outward from the classroom more and more by themselves.
So Dave, specifically seeing Blake go from Nim's class to Steve's class, we had our observation, and Dave and I were talking about how different it was, because they just come into the class, and their free choice is free choice, but within more of an academic, they're playing, what do they call it, war, but with 4 cards, so they're adding in 4 to determine if they're going to win the other child, so they're doing that. They have some reading programs on the computer. They have an option. They have the cutting and pasting table, but it was much more, a little more organized, slightly more, you could see the academic in there. So that was, they were all just happy as fun. They were just so happy and ready. My son in particular, here I thought, he's been on campus because my daughter for years, and he walked in the Woods building, the teacher said, he walks in the first day and it was like he owned the place. Well, 3 days later, he had his first emotional breakdown. So there's still, we can't forget there's an academic piece, but the social piece, that's still going on. He had his breakdown. He had one a week later. But it was so great, because instead of, my stepmom actually said, well, did they send him to the, office? Did they, because he wasn't doing what he was told. Steve just said, okay, go ahead and put your head down. He put his head down the first time. I think it was 2.5 hours. The second time, maybe an hour and a half. And the third time, maybe a little less. Maybe, actually, that was the time. It only lasted about 15 minutes. But Steve said, when you're ready to join us, then we're here for you. And that was it. And so, can't forget about that piece still going on.
What I like is that, okay, so you mentioned Steve, and I think, oh wow, Steve's a great teacher. I love Steve. And I was thinking, well, who have I not had, and who has not been a great teacher? And I can't think of one. So, it doesn't really matter who you get. Although Steve's awesome.
He is.
I have a question. Is it common to have the same teacher or the same classroom more than 1 year in the Woods building? How does that kind of work?
Yeah,
in general?
it's very common.
Okay.
And it's kind of, placement is this mystery I don't really understand. I mean, the problem is as parents, we want to get, or at least for me, get hung up on what grade is he in, right? You know, is this 3rd grade? Is this 4th grade? I don't know, right? But the point is that we're putting kids together, I think, that have developmentally, similar stages. Sometimes, and sometimes the teacher will move, right? So this year the teacher's teaching 2nd grade, and next year they're going to teach 3rd grade, right? Because, again, the mystery of life. Right? The trouble is, though, it means we as parents have to kind of step back and say, we're trusting that this placement is going to work, and we're not going to get hung up on what grade they're in. I mean, it was hard. It's hard sometimes because obviously you get this class unit, and they move to different places, and so you say, well, you know, they were best friends, right? And now they're not in the same class anymore. What's interesting about that is sometimes it's hard because Gus was separated from his best friend last year, who he'd been in school with since Julie's class. And so what was interesting is that for that first week, it was like, well, I still saw Gabe, right, outside. We were in the playground. It was great. But both of them now, I've talked to both of them, they still get together for play dates, but both of them say it's really fun because we still get to see each other, but we've made new friends. So that was, I mean, I'd never actually, had I had that before? I'm not quite in that same way, but I haven't really, with placement, I haven't had a problem in the million years that I've been here.
Was there a question about teachers multiple years? Is that?
Yeah. Just,
so my kids have strangely had a lot of that. Drew has been here for 7 years and has had 3 teachers. Wow. So he had his first teacher, and it just worked out that way. I mean, he had an amazing relationship with Tom, who used to be his teacher at 4 years old in just one of these rooms. And then Tom was moving up. Anyway, it just turned out that Tom followed him, and then up to the Woods Building. So his first 3 years here, he got Tom. And actually, I wrote a letter to the head at that time saying, if you're working through placement and you're thinking of separating them because Drew's already had 2 years, please don't. It's a really good fit, and they really get each other. And so we encouraged that 3rd year. And now Drew's had Alice in the list class for 3 years. And what's interesting and neat about it is that there's no starting and stopping, you know. And actually Zoe is on her 2nd year of her teacher this year. And so this fall was the easiest we've ever had because we knew that both teachers knew our kids already. And they already knew how to push them from day one on what their little things were, you know. This fall I can say it was a huge advantage. And I've never seen it as a disadvantage.
It's a disadvantage. I think it's a disadvantage if you think of like a traditional 2nd grade. This is our curriculum for 2nd grade, so having the same teacher even teach the next grade may feel very, may not feel as good. But because the kids again are being approached in such a very individual way, that year of knowledge they already have, because we're 2nd year of Alice, 2 years of Tom, was again it's just hitting the ground running and just this great relationship and rapport that already existed.
What was the transition for homeworks?
It comes on slowly, where Zoe, let's see, Zoe didn't have it in Steve's class? Does Steve do homework?
No.
Yeah. So the first year in Woods Building didn't have it at all. Then the 2nd year had a little bit, and so the teacher would give a homework packet in the beginning of the week, and they'd have all week. And pretty much the main thing was how much reading they did every night with their parents. So it was, with a 20-30-minute goal. And it was just the parents signing on. And then occasional fun little extension. This year again, the teacher, so now in 3rd grade, he isn't going to start it until probably after the new year. And she's been asking for him. So she's asked for extra math homework, because she says, I think I need a little bit more math. And that's not even me. I mean, that's not me pushing her or my husband pushing her. It is, Zoe sees that as something she's working on, so she's asked for extra math.
And there's a bit of like, you know, like Cooper also asked for homework because, again, they see older kids doing it and they feel like, well, yeah, they start modeling that in a way they like see that as a you know, something to, you know, I wouldn't say that it's fun because it's not always fun to play homework, but it is a sort of badge of honor at the same time. There's a sense of like, this is part of the schooling as well. We earn this as well.
What's interesting is I don't remember either of my older two ever having homework. And I don't know if the policy has changed, but they never had homework. And so that was one of the things I was worried about in the transition to middle school, is like, what's going to happen? And what's funny is the difference between my daughter and my son is that my daughter has the attitude, why do anything unless you can do it perfectly? So she, as soon as she started getting homework, it was like, great, this is another chance to show how great I am. Whereas my son is, why do anything perfectly when I can get a great grade just by doing it like this? But neither of them had a problem with homework in that sense, because it was, here's a chance to show what I know, rather than here's something I have to do every night, even though I haven't been used to it, right? So, and what's interesting is I've heard of other kids who've asked for homework because, for instance, they see their older siblings doing it. I don't have this problem with Gus. Gus is not asking for homework, but I've certainly heard of it. So as a chance to show what you know, I think they're well set up to do homework, whether they're assigned homework here or not. Yeah.
So we've got a couple minutes left. I'm going to say something and then let you think if you have one more question. But for you folks, I'm wondering if you can think back, anything you wish that somebody had said to you that might have allayed some of your fears or given you some information. You know, here's the advice moment, if there is one. While you're thinking, anybody have any thoughts?
I have to say, I've heard the parking lot rumors. I don't know if you've all heard them, but over the years I've heard a lot. And I was more concerned with Molly Ann because she was my first time through. And actually, when this kind of forum would have been great for me at that time. But in second grade, we did step out and have her tested. And once again, I was so nervous about it. I felt so bad. It was through the public school system. And she could care less. She just did it, came back with a smile on her face. I was thinking, oh, we need to take her out to lunch. And then she had to do it the next Saturday. And her test results in second grade came back great. I mean, and David and I kind of regrouped and said, okay, what were we thinking? Of course, we love this environment. So I guess I wish someone would have talked to me more in this forum at the time. So it's great that you guys have kind of hopefully put a kibosh to some of the kind of the hearsay, because it kind of grows out of control. You know what I'm saying? And I kind of got caught up in that with her in second grade a little bit, and I had to go outside and do my own research, and then came back and realized, okay, there wasn't a lot of foundation to what I was hearing. There wasn't a lot of facts.
Gosh, I think it was, for me, I wish someone had said, you need to trust your child, right? Your child will develop at his or her own rate. And you need to trust that that will happen and that the school will facilitate that process. That by the time kids get to middle school, they're going to know how to read, They're gonna know their times tables. They're gonna, you know, they're gonna be some things that by the time you get to middle school, all this stuff is gonna get focused in. But you kind of need to trust that's gonna happen, and that's a big step, right? It's a big step to say, you know, okay, for instance, Gus. Gus might not be comfortable reading even by 3rd grade, but we have to trust that by the time he gets to 5th grade, he's gonna be there. Right, Cooper is gonna be there. So the problem becomes then you're kind of trusting that you're going to go all the way through to 5th grade on this journey, because you know, your kid might not be reading by 3rd grade, but if they were in a traditional program, they would have been whipped until they were able to read at a certain level and probably not enjoy it. So that was what I wish I'd been told. Trust your
child.
Grace.
Yeah.
Trust that grace.
Not even trust us.
Will,
trust your child.
Yeah.
Because your child is growing.
Yeah.
Right. I would say look at yourself too and what you want out of education.
Yeah.
My husband and I had to look. We both did a lot of education, and all of it was in big, huge public institutions. So big schools all along. My husband all the way through med school, me through master's programs. All of our education was very traditional and public. And we always thought we'd do public. And then we discovered the little school, and here we are, both kids. And we live in Bellevue in a lovely public school system, and we're getting better education here. But it took us at that level to start really evaluating what we would have wanted out of our education and what we really want for each of our children. And for some families, it's different for each kid. Some families, so what I'm learning as I'm looking for my son's middle school, the schools he's picking are perfect for him. They would not have been good for me. So I had to, when I was looking, you sure you don't like that school? I really like that school. I really would have liked that design program. But for him, he knows exactly what he wants, you know. So, and at the age of your children, they're not going to know exactly what they want. So it's looking at yourself too, of what you know about your own children and what kind of education you want for them. And go ahead and do research, and there are plenty of people at the school. We're happy to answer questions. And people who work here who have a lot of answers, you know, of how does my child learn? And, you know, how is this working for my child? And your observations, your teacher conferences, all that feeds your knowledge. And my husband and I went and just read a bunch of different books. At the time, we read a book about, I can't remember the name of it, or I give it to you, about how the brain works. We read, at the same time, we were also reading a book on the future economy and how to educate your child, you know, for the future economy, and Little School Fit, right, both of those, okay. Brain research, yep, Little School gets how boys and girls are different and how they move in different rates. And then an Alfie Kohn book that just tore apart the traditional education. So it was just all those coming together, we did our research. And that's what we needed to do to figure out what we wanted for education for our kids.
And I would say, I guess, in a way that since we've asked you to trust your kids yourselves, now I'll say that also that the teachers, the way that they approach the kids is really, they're like ninja teachers. You know? they have like this ability to just like lock into what the kids are doing and how they're doing it. And you know, when people were worried, or when he wasn't reading, he was in Joyce's class. And we were both of our conferences were like, he's not reading. Like my wife and I both write.
The writers.
And she's like, don't worry. He's gonna like, as soon as you know, it turns out he had vision issues. He had to take vision therapy, and she's like, wait, he has to go through a year of vision therapy. And at the end of that year, it's gonna explode for him. And don't worry. She did such a great job of managing us. He's great. He loves reading. He loves stories. All of that stuff the brain is ready to do it as soon as, you know, like the right pieces click into place. And that's the thing that they really, I think, understand here about your kids, and where I think that continues very seamlessly up into the Woods building.
four of you.
Yes.
Thank you to you folks for being here.
Yes, thank
Next week, same time, we're going to have a panel of teachers from the Woods Building. They'll give you another perspective on the process and what goes on there. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to have a panel of current students from the Woods Building who have been here and are now there and are, in some cases, getting ready to move on to middle school. So follow up with these folks if you'd like at another point. I'm guessing they're willing to do that. Thank you. Great conversation.